So in your lecture on belonging and joy, and you shared a confession, Kenda, and you talked about just sometimes you just didn't even see the youth that needed to be seen. Um, how do you see?
Yeah.
How do you see?
Yeah, I think that there are various ways that I think we can have the scales fall from our eyes, right? And a lot of it has to do with personal encounter with people who are different from us, or whose experience challenges ours in some way. And I don't know a lot of people who sometimes, but in a lot of cases, the people who are in our congregations are a lot like us. And so to really encounter somebody who is other requires getting out of the church walls and getting out in the community and figuring out where people are in need and going there. I mean, there's plenty of theological reasons to do that, but it's also a practical thing in that once you have an experience with someone who is who's different or hasn't just been on your radar before, you then begin to see them, right? They become part of your community. And we tend to see the people that we are predisposed to see.
Yeah.
So, as long as we only have experience with ourselves and with people like us, there's a whole lot of blinders that we're going to go
Yeah.
into the world with. So, I really am a big advocate of getting the church to go to people rather than to expect people to come to church, which is a theologically misguided understanding of church in the first place.
Right.
But it's the idea for the church to be the people who come alongside you, to be the people who notice in you gifts that we think God's given you. And whether you think God's given them to you, that might not matter. But we think God gave you those gifts, so we should support you in using those gifts. And so the church becomes the champions of young people in all different ways that may or may not ever darken the doors of the church. That doesn't mean that we never invite them. It doesn't mean that we don't worship. It does mean all of those things. But in terms of how we see them, how we acknowledge their created glory from God, we just got to get out of the pews and into somebody else's field to do that. I don't know how you would describe that.
Yeah, I mean, I think an experience that I had back in around 2002, 2003, I had been doing youth ministry at around this one high school for 6 years already at this point. And I thought I knew the school really well, And then one summer, I was just confronted by this idea that kids with disabilities, shocking idea, that kids with disabilities belonged as well. Whoa. And I went back to the high school that fall, and I had not seen in 6 years, but that high school was a hub of disabilities in the county. And so there was a whole section of the lunchroom, table after table after table, full of kids with disabilities that I had never once seen. I had not even seen them in the room that I had spent hundreds of hours in. And so I was struck by how have I missed these kids. But then, once I became aware of them, I saw them everywhere. And truly, they were a part of every aspect of life in the community, and I couldn't not see them any longer.
Yeah.
I remember being at a training event and hearing this woman, Justine Conley, walk around and say, "I wish my eyes had never been opened." And she said it about 40 times. She just kept walking up and down the aisles of the auditorium. "I wish my eyes had never been opened." And at the first 10 times she says it, we're like, "We heard you." And then the next 10 times we're like, "Huh." And the last 10 to 20 times, half of us had tears in our eyes because we're like, "I know what you're talking about." Because once I've seen kids and I've seen the pain of their lives and I've seen the need, it's hard to unsee. Sometimes I wish I could unsee, I'm sure you both know that. But it was really these kids with disabilities that once I saw them, I couldn't unsee them anymore. They were there, and I had to decide, am I going to respond faithfully or not? Am I going to make room for them or not? I think Ben Connor is somebody who's written about this, and it's really amplifying witness, right? Excellent work on that issue of hey, look, we're missing something here. We're missing a part of the witness. of the body of Christ when we don't make room for these kids. So, yeah, it was shocking to me to literally walk the halls of this cafeteria and never see them, and they were there all along.
Yeah.